Hello, welcome to another tutorial video. This time we're going to be looking at An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley. Brilliant play. We'll be looking at it in three areas: the way it's written, the themes, and the characters. The reason I start with the way it's written is because it's really good to try and get your head around, should I say, what the writer is trying to do, and then that kind of informs the way you look at the themes and the way you look at characters, because you can kind of see which characters the writer is choosing to use as a vehicle for certain things. So it's good to focus on that. I'll go into a little more about essay but perfection or essay kind of detailing in another video as well, but obviously there's the old ones, the 7 original tutorial videos that will give you a good start. So here we look at, first of all, the way it's written. Well, there's a big difference in the time it's set to the time it was written. So obviously what's actually on stage is basically set in 1912, but he's writing it in 1945 at the end of a war, so it's a real change. So even for people after the war, this would have seemed like a real bygone era. This had been a memory of something to them, because obviously over the war all of this would have been largely irrelevant to a point because of the way that the war changed the way people interacted in Britain at the time. And it's a warning of basically how things were, and also using that time contrast between the setting and the time of writing is a real warning to people to I invite them not to go back to the past, to really bear in mind that things were bad and we don't want to go there again. We've got to change. So it's always stressing this time of rethinking an opportunity to actually make that change and actually build something. And maybe society took it on heart at large, with the introduction of the NHS and job seekers allowances, etc. Maybe there was a lot better provision for the people who were kind of lower down in societal ranks. It's all set again in one place, which kind of builds up a lot of the tension, really kind of makes it come through that they're in the kind of this kettle house, and just being in this one place kind of shows you again that the one thing that's always stressed is that microcosm. What's going on here is going on as a representation for the whole country, so it's something that everyone needs to learn from, and it's something that will affect everyone, because the one house there could be any house, especially in the upper classes who would have been going to the theatre at the time to watch such a thing. Again, just to really drill that home on the setting and time of writing, Priestley's bringing back an era that people kind of accepted. There wasn't really much that people were able to do about this class division that was very prevalent at the time, between the upper class and then the middle class and the lower class. And it's also obviously against ideologies, like kind of setup of ideologies of the socialism that Priestley would champion, and obviously the capitalism or early capitalism that was prevalent during the late 19th, early 20th century. So you want to think about all those kind of contrasts in the setting and the time. If you mention a couple of points about that, you're going to be onto a good thing. So the language and dialects throughout, basically we don't have too many, but we've got a real sense that these are well-to-do people, and we can see from Mr. Burling's kind of slight hints in his accent, etc., and some of the things he says, and even just the directness with some of the things he says, we see that he's not fully from this class that his wife is from, and obviously it's kind of put so in the text as well, and his children have grown up into that world above. They're more like his mother more like their mother, should I say, in the way that they actually communicate with each other. So basically we realize that they're both of a kind of upper class, even though the mother's of a higher class, etc. And then there's kind of like a people, because it will show you that people will work towards trying to be upper class, trying to be in this level of society, but as a character and as a person, the person it makes you, it might not be the best thing for you. So the accents obviously show the class, like with Mr. Burling, we hire the Mr. Burling, and also shows their standing and the authority and intimidation. Like you'll notice a lot of the time the language and the words that Mr. Burling uses, especially at the beginning, trying to intimidate the inspector, it's a lot of name dropping, and there's a lot of kind of bragging about self, to try and make the inspector, or should I say remind the inspector of what he presumes is the inspector's place. But obviously, as we know, by the end of the play, the inspector isn't from Earth, so there is no place, quote unquote, for him. The lighting and the timing throughout, really important. Obviously the spotlights on the characters, and obviously when the inspector kind of comes in, the lighting changes, I think, and when we open up, and we've kind of got this set kind of red light, like almost danger, a reddish light, kind of pinkish glow, this kind of danger just to start us off, just with this feeling of something's going to go unease. And then obviously when the lights come on, it's like the inspector's inspecting them under a spotlight, etc. So look out obviously for the scene changes, etc., where it actually happens, the timing of those. Like one of them happens when Eric just walks back in, when they've just discussed who the father of the Eva's child was, etc. And also when the inspector first comes in, that interruption to Mr. Burling's speech about how great capitalism is. And also look at how when people come and go, I mean, Gerald leaves and returns, at the perfect timing, etc. This is just all part of his craft to give us this full story and picture Priestley's craft to give us this full story and picture in such a short space of time, because it all happens over a night. So in the structure then, it all happens overnight. It's a very kind of short time frame, it feels quite intimate for it. He goes through inspecting all of them and asking questions of all of them, interrogating all of them, whichever way you want to put it. And basically it's all set up after this, just before the phone call of the real death of Eva Smith, or of the young girl that's actually been called up. So it's kind of really kind of loops back on itself. So you want to get the idea of that round the structure. It comes back round, we go through something, and then because there's no consequence, some of the characters just go back to where they were. Some of them do, some of them don't, and then we start again, and we're just left to think that this kind of recurs. And there might be a lot that Priestley's saying in that, there's a lot of people who haven't learned, and there's maybe even for the whole thing we've actually been through this idea before. Maybe there was another change that we could have had after World War One, but we haven't fully realized it. There's a lot he could be saying in there. He goes through them all one by one. He goes one line of inquiry at a time, so he really wanted to kind of pick them out. And that's good just to mention that he's going to slowly show the audience like the breakdown of each person. It's not just kind of he comes and goes, you're all responsible, and runs out again. He wants to break through them one by one so we can feel the different levels that we believe they're responsible. And also there's certain things that we see or we relate to that we might find of kind of more of a starker sin, or things that we might not dislike. I mean, you can pick who you think is the most risible of all the characters. My personal is Mrs. Burling. Can't stand her, but in that way, obviously, she's built as a great character. And obviously, that sense of building guilt and shared responsibility is one of the key themes. That's to try and get that across, and it's put to us by the structure of going through each one individually, showing how responsible they each were. And also, there's a really interesting point that you might want to notice here. I should really put a question mark here, because this is obviously like, if you can talk about this, do it. There's setups, even though we kind of got this stereotype of Sheila at the beginning, just being this materialistic girl, etc., etc. We've got this setup at the beginning where she's got a little of intuition, where she can see, or she knows that Gerald's up to something, and so she kind of sees through. So there's kind of been a setup there. We know that she's going to have this insight. So when she comes to actually show us this insight on a grander scale with her acceptance of the inspector's ideas, we can really see that she had that perception. We knew she had it, so it kind of sets us up for seeing her that way. And also, the mother, Mrs. Burling's her arrogance on the name. That's a really great setup, I think, because she starts, "I'm Mrs. Burling, don't you know?" Probably not in such a lame accent, but at the end, it's the name, or the kind of arrogance with the name is what kind of is a huge undoing, because it's Eva's quote-unquote use of her name as Burling that actually kind of prejudices her against the Eva's case. So that kind of setup with the name being such a something you're so proud of, and then falling on it, it's a great setup as well. It kind of builds a real sense of intrigue throughout, or at least it rewards rewatching and rereading. Excuse me.